Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. And that's right, yes. You know what this documentary it is that I'm reviewing. And yeah, I of course, and I'm sure the same goes for a lot of you, been very excited that we had gotten a documentary on one of the greatest composers in the world of cinema. I mean, that's what he's most known for, but he did more than just that. Actually, he did a lot of stuff before he would go on to be one of the top masters of bringing music to life. The touch of music that makes movie magic in some of our favorite films in cinema. Yeah. That's right, guys. I am finally reviewing the documentary on Disney Plus, Music by John Williams. Yes. And what do you think of the getup I have on? Because especially the shirt? Because obviously I have to. Alright, but yeah, so the documentary, Music by John Williams. Yeah, because I'm glad to finally have seen and watched this documentary, and to now finally review it. You're watching my review of this. Yeah, excellent. It was really good. I really enjoyed this documentary. And how can I not? How can you not? Because this is all about John Williams, the man who brought us so many great pieces of music in some of our favorite films. Just extraordinary, really. And I'm pretty sure because, yeah, I had a good feeling at one point, and yeah, because obviously, this is not just about, John Williams' work in bringing movie scores to life and such, obviously, because more than that, his background and his childhood and, the fact that he came from a family of music talent and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, because what his father did and his mother did, they each did some different things with music and so on, but until I talk about that. And everybody that's involved in this documentary, besides Williams himself, and the fact that, yeah, some of the greatest filmmakers that had the privilege to work with John Williams, like, of course, most prominently Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, and some other familiar faces in the realm of music that, what they have to say about Williams himself, and, yeah. And, just overall, because, with John Williams' life and with what is told in this documentary, I mean, yeah, because it's nice to see that, the story of John Williams, he had a pretty good life, and yeah, because, not a lot of, bad, just a few. I mean, yeah, obviously John Williams went through some tough times in his career and life, and what is brought up in this documentary, but overall, because, yeah, making good progress and making a great living at bringing music to life and such, and the various changes he would go through, and of course, when it would come to, say, him being in the business of, and for the rest of his life, bringing music to life in movies. Yeah. And, there are some things in this documentary, for me, personally, that, well, I didn't know that much of Williams. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing with documentaries, a documentary on, and I know I've probably talked about this before, where documentaries, whatever it is that a documentary talks about, like on a person or whatever, I mean, yeah, we are familiar with so-and-so and with what is talked about in this documentary, but there's more that we do not know. And until, having seen this documentary, yeah. And yeah, because yeah, there were a few things in this documentary all about John Williams that I didn't fully know of until now. Man, because it's amazing and just, yeah, hard to believe. And as I said, some bumps in the road that happened in Williams' life, and yeah, especially in the business of music, especially when it came to concerts. that was a very interesting subject, but until I bring that up, yeah. And, you know, because those that are a part of this documentary and what they have to say about, you know, when they, for the first time, heard some specific pieces of music that Williams played on one of his pianos, and hearing those notes for the first time, you know, just mind blown and life-changing. And yeah, because, you know, John Williams' music being like a life-changing experience to anybody whom has the love for music. You know, even especially, like, loving music in movies. Yeah. Yeah, you know, just overall, I'm really am glad that, you know, we have this documentary that's all about John Williams. How fitting is it to have a documentary all about John Williams, one of the best composers, you know, in all of cinematic history. I mean, he's not the only one, you know, because there's a bunch of others, but definitely he's the top one, you know, that takes the frosting on the cake. You know what I'm going for. Just, yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the documentary of Music by John Williams. It's extraordinary, and of course, I recommend it. So yeah. So, with the first things I've had to say about Music by John Williams out of the way, now, as always, for me, read the description / the story on the documentary. An exploration of composer John Williams' story, with insights from filmmakers, musicians, and others he has inspired, obviously, along with rare behind-the-scenes glimpses into the making of cinematic history. Alright, so, with that out of the way, now, let's break down the documentary itself. Oh, and by the way, because, yeah, nice to see that this got a 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Well deserved, yeah. Alright, so, as I was saying, breaking down the documentary, because, yeah, well, you know, because it starts off really great, and, well, because, you know, with some documentaries, how they would first start off, and before they would, like, go into, say, the early beginnings of so-on, so, just, yeah. And, yeah, might as well talk about, you know, John Williams' backstory, you know, his early childhood and so on. Well, like as I brought up a little early on, where, yeah, because John Williams, you know, he first went by Johnny Jr., because, yeah, his father having that same kind of name almost, and, yeah. And his parents, they were already in the business of, like, music and stuff like that. Like, most prominently, John Williams' father. John Williams' father, was a drummer and so on, and, yeah. Johnny Williams, because, yep, that's because John taking his father's name, but with Junior in it, and his mother, Esther Williams, she was a dancer, and, John had, quite a few siblings, you know, having a few brothers and a sister, and even, yeah, his siblings, you know, they got into the music business as well. And unfortunately, you know, one of his siblings, his late sister, Joanne, because sadly, and as the documentary explains, and most prominently from John himself, that, you know, unfortunately his sister passed away, and his sister, Joanne, was a piano teacher, yeah. But yeah, just, it's great to see, because already, you know, little Johnny Williams Jr. coming in, you know, being a part of this family, already doing, you know, music stuff and stuff like that. And, you know, even when, like, say, pointing out at one point that his parents, you know, being a part of the same thing together, because his father would be playing the drums, and while on stage, his wife / John's mother, you know, dancing and so on, just, yeah. And when, yeah, John himself, would, then make his way into the music business, learning to play the piano most prominently. Even at one point, he was learning to play the saxophone, but at one point his father told him to, you know, stop with the saxophone stuff and focus full-time on the piano, and, well, from there on. And yeah, because what John would do next, over the years, and, you know, of course, having gone to high school, and, well, learning about the art of music and such, and those that had an influence on John, you know, those that inspired him and so on, and with what's described in the documentary, and even when at one point, like, there was a moment where John being so invested in, the world of jazz music. And, John Williams, had done some jazz music. Yeah, I bet probably some of you didn't know that. And even George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, they were familiar with John's work even before they knew the man himself and became good friends with him. Because, yeah, George, most prominently, he had listened and heard to the jazz music that John Williams had done. And it's also mentioned that some of the films that John Williams would score for, putting some jazz in it, like, well, most prominently, Catch Me If You Can. If any of you have seen that movie and have listened to Williams' score for that film, you may notice that even in the opening credits, there is some jazz to it. Yeah, so, well, yeah, because, well, John being very familiar with how to do jazz specifically, and the fact that he incorporated it in a few films where he would do the music and scores for. That's awesome. Also, there was one point where, yeah, John would slowly but surely find his way to being a conductor, writing music and so on. But at the same time, also to mention that he did play piano for some films where someone else was doing the music and score, and, well, John just playing, what's on the paper on the piano and so on. And he was involved in quite a lot of big-time films. I think, most prominently, the one Marlon Brando film, I'm sure you know which one it is, and also To Kill a Mockingbird, yeah, apparently because John was involved in that too. Nice to see. Well, because, keep in mind, because John doing some music and such, in the very early days of, the 50s and 60s, yeah. And when it would come up to, say, the 60s, that's when, because slowly but surely John would find his way into writing music and composing and such. Most prominently for a lot of TV materials, and even, say, having worked alongside with a lot of familiar directors whom started off directing some TV stuff, but they would find their way into the realm of cinema, most prominently Richard Donner, because Richard Donner, whom we know best for directing, say, Goonies and the two Superman films, because Donner had done some TV stuff and, most prominently directing one of the top gems of the Twilight Zone. We all know what that is. And I seem to recall when I did see Richard Donner's name pop up in the documentary, because I presume that, because he was involved in Gilligan's Island, yeah. And that's the thing, because John Williams, for those of you that don't know, and I'm sure you would be familiar with Gilligan's Island, John Williams was there from the start of Gilligan's Island, doing the music and such for Gilligan's Island. Also, writing a new piece of theme for Lost in Space, where, da, 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 that one, yeah. Because sometime in the later seasons of Lost in Space, it would have a new theme music, and, yeah, you know that, of course. a lot of TV stuff that he was involved in. Even Peter Gunn. He was involved in Peter Gunn at one point, and I think, because, well, obviously responsible for the Peter Gunn theme. And let's also talk about John's family, because, well, I've already talked about his parents, but I did not talk about, his wife and his children, because he was first married to actress Barbara Rook. I don't think I'm getting her last name right, but again, you know me sometimes. She was the first wife of John. They were married from 1956 to 74, and they had 3 kids. 2 sons and 1 daughter. Joseph Williams, who, has a most prominent part in this documentary, and John's 2 sons, Mark Towner and... Oh, wait a second, I'm sorry. No, Jennifer. Joseph... What's with me? I'm sorry, Jennifer Williams. My mistake, yeah. And as I said, Jennifer having a prominent part in the documentary, because, because I have seen her attend to some stuff that her daddy attends to, most prominently the Oscars. And that's Jennifer. Okay. I didn't quite fully realize that. But yeah. So, John's 2 sons, Joseph and Mark Towner, because, Yeah, they don't appear in this documentary. I mean, it's a shame. It would have been nice if they did, but I guess maybe they just were not available or they weren't interested. I don't know, but yeah. And, well, I mean, because John's children, most prominently his two sons, they would find themselves in the music business. Nice to see, yep. And yeah, just, well, I mean, Williams, you know, having a very happy life, being happily married to his first wife. And, well, this I did not actually realize until watching the documentary, because, yeah, when it came to the 1970s, sadly, and out of nowhere, you know, because nobody saw this coming, those that worked with Barbara and, you know, and unbeknownst to, you know, John and the others, yeah, because, unfortunately, in 1974, when Barbara was filming this movie from 1974 called California Split, yeah, and if any of you are familiar with that film, well, she sadly, unexpectedly died from a hemorrhagic stroke. If I might be mispronouncing some of it, but I'm pretty sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And yeah, obviously, that being a very painful time for poor Williams and his kids, yeah. And, well, because one of the cast members of California Split called up the Williams family's house, you know, and, well, Jennifer answered, and, well, John Williams was not present at home, but when he came back, because, yeah, that's when, you know, he responded and found out about what was going on, you know, with his wife, and yeah, what had happened, and, you know, Williams having to go and take care of all this, and yeah, you know, and by this point, Williams being up to his 40s, and, you know, having to look after his now 3 teenage kids, you know, not that bad, but, you know, still, because, you know, not easy, you know, and just being a single parent, you know, being the only parent to look after the kids. But according to Jennifer, she actually helped look after her 2 brothers, and it wasn't that difficult for her, especially since, yeah, all 3 of them had a great chemistry. Yep, like peas in a pod. Just, yeah, you know, 3 siblings that had a really good relationship. That's great to see. Yeah, and yeah, man, it's unfortunate because Barbara, she was only 41 when she died. Far too young. Just, man, it's really a shame. And like I said, I didn't have full knowledge with his first wife, and not that much until as of now. Yeah, it's thanks to this documentary, and I'm sure the same goes for some of you. And right after talking about that subject, well, because, yeah, enter the 1970s, and, well, the 1970s would for sure become a big decade for Williams. And, yeah, because, and, you know, it's also sad because, you know, Williams' first wife having died just before, yeah, Williams' music career would really kick off. But, you know, at least, you know, surely, because, and I think, yeah, the documentary did establish this even with what Williams said, you know, Barbara would have wanted, you know, her hubby to continue on, and what would come for him next. Yeah, pretty much. Not to mention that, you know, something for her funeral and something, and John did something that had to do with a violin, because, according to Williams, Barbara loved the instrument, the violin, and yeah, with what he specifically explains, just, yeah, and, you know, just couldn't figure a way out to do something with the violin and when his wife was still alive until now when, yeah, his wife died. It's, you know, just one of those things, nothing intentional. But yeah, so, again, when the 1970s would roll in, which would become the biggest decade and biggest thing to come into Williams' career, where, yeah, because he would, of course, get into the business of doing scores and music for big-time films, and yeah, because a lot of big films in the early 1970s that came in, like, you know, the Poseidon Adventure, you know, the one with Gene Hackman, Leslie Nielsen, Roddy McDowall, that film. I have, you know, a bit of trouble pronouncing the first word, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, everyone on the cruise ship, and yeah. Also, Earthquake, that, and with Charlton Heston, and, you know, with what he had brought into those movies with its score and music, and even when, say, yeah, he eventually would cross paths with Steven Spielberg himself. One of the first movies that Williams did the music and score for in one of Spielberg's films would be actually Spielberg's theatrical film debut. Well, yeah, his directorial debut directing a feature film on the big screen, Sugarland Express. And by having a harmonica in the music and score, the tone and setting for Sugarland Express, with Williams having seen a cut of Sugarland Express and being amazed with what Spielberg had done, bringing this movie to life. You know, Williams' first impression of Spielberg was different, but not really in a bad way. But when he saw a cut of Sugarland Express, yeah, just amazed on Spielberg's being such a great director, you know, great at filmmaking. And yeah, so when it came to doing the music and score for Sugarland Express, just, yeah, very amazing, and for Spielberg. And then when it would come to say, well, you know, for Spielberg and Williams, Jaws. And yeah, that was actually one of the first things that was brought up at the start of this documentary, where, yeah, because that was the very first piece of music that Williams ever played for Spielberg. I guess that, yeah, because that didn't happen for Sugarland Express. Like, Williams didn't have Spielberg come in and listen to something on the piano, I guess. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the case right there. But yeah, when it came to Jaws, yeah, that was for the first time that Spielberg, in person with Williams at Williams' piano, listening to something that Williams played on the piano. And the very first thing that Spielberg heard Williams play on the piano for Jaws was, of course, the first opening notes to Jaws. You know, da 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 da. Yeah, that whole thing, just amazing. Yeah, and actually, because yeah, I mean, Spielberg, what Spielberg was wanting to go for at first with Jaws, like, using different pieces of music, like, very intense and, like, horror vibes or something, you know? But to Williams, you know, well, he did the opposite, where, because, yeah, the way he viewed Jaws, when seeing a cut of Jaws, well, because this being adventurous and, like, a, you know, pirate-ish stuff and stuff like that, and what he would bring to the music of Jaws, well, would turn out to be excellent. Yes, and to Spielberg's liking in the end. Yeah, and also because, yeah, multiple times in this documentary where, yeah, because Spielberg and Williams, they're on screen together. Even when Spielberg made a surprise visit to Williams when filming this documentary. And, yeah, some of the stories that they share in person on the documentary is really great and sweet. And, like, you know, even, like, them jokingly saying that they got first married in the 70s, you know, like, that's pretty funny. Like, bromance, just, yeah. But yeah, I mean, because Jaws being a biggie for not just Spielberg, but for Williams as well, with the music and score that he brought to Jaws, and what would come next for Williams in the 1970s. And yep, because now might as well go ahead and talk about this. Star Wars, of course. Have to talk about Star Wars, because yep, that being another biggie for Williams. Well, because when it came to Star Wars, Lucas had Williams in mind for doing the music and score for Star Wars. Williams, at that time, he had no idea who George was, and he had not seen American Graffiti. That was on him, having not seen American Graffiti. I think if he had seen American Graffiti, well, I'm sure, yeah, he would have really gotten a kick out of George's style of filmmaking, and would have immediately wanted to work with George. Because, yeah, I mean, from George Lucas, John Williams, and Steven Spielberg, having that same taste of cinema and with the music and score. Not to mention, it was brought up that sometime in the 1970s, well, yeah, in the late 60s and 70s, there really wasn't that much of, you know, film scores. Instead, you know, just some movies like, Easy Rider and a few others, just, yeah, having music and songs from that era of the time, you know what I mean? Just, yeah. But it's thanks to Williams that, yeah, bringing music and score back the right way and properly so, just, yeah. And, because I think had it not been for Williams, God knows what it would be like if, yeah, we didn't have, like, the proper music and scores for movies, you know what I mean? Just, yeah, so it's definitely thanks to Williams, yeah. But yeah, so back to where I was about, when Williams first met George and getting involved in Star Wars, because actually, Williams wasn't really sure if he wanted to do Star Wars at first. He was considering at one point, wanting to do A Bridge Too Far, which, yeah, I'm sure you guys you'd be familiar with this movie, which did come out the same year as Star Wars, 1977, and having a lot of big-time names from Sean Connery, Anthony Hopkins, Gene Hackman, the list goes on, and yeah, because Williams knowing on whom was going to be in this movie and was interested in doing that, but eventually, because, yeah, he was convinced to probably, yeah, just to skip on doing A Bridge Too Far because, being more commercial or something like that, and how it's specifically put in the documentary about A Bridge Too Far. So, yeah, I mean, eventually, with Williams meeting George, and it's thanks to Spielberg, because Spielberg, told Williams that he should meet George, and because, well, yeah, and even Steven, felt that Williams would be perfect composing Star Wars because, well, Spielberg, and along with a lot of other big-time directors like Coppola, De Palma, George's friends, getting to see a cut of Star Wars, Spielberg really being the only one that was invested in the story and the film itself, yeah, and with the characters, and the fact that there was no music yet, and, well, because when it came to that, yeah, Spielberg, recommending George to hire Williams, and, well, especially since, Williams having worked with Spielberg on Jaws and Sugarland Express, and, yeah, George at that time only knew Williams for his jazz music, and George asking about that of Spielberg, but he's mainly done jazz, but Spielberg clarifying to George that no, because he's done a lot more than that, because the fact that he has gotten into the business of doing scores for movies. So, yeah. So, eventually, yeah, Williams and George having met, and already getting along pretty well. And obviously, yeah, because it's just like how, Williams and Spielberg got along just like that. So, yeah. And, well, Williams would once again make history with the music and score that he wrote for the first Star Wars film, unlike anything. And when it would also come to, say, hiring the London Symphony Orchestra. Yep, because this was the first time for Williams to work with them and to do the music and score for Star Wars. Just excellent, yeah. And the pieces of music that Williams wrote for Star Wars that we know and love so well. We have our favorite pieces of music that Williams wrote from Star Wars. And the fact that they talk about this, and even like later on in this documentary, that Williams writing themes for every single character. Just, from Luke, Leia, Yoda, and the Empire, of course, the Imperial March most prominently. And just, yeah, just amazing. Even when, like, say, there was one moment where there was originally going to be a different piece of music for the Tatooine sunset, the twin sunset, but, George didn't find that appealing, like, it just didn't fit, and, yeah, I can see George's point, and the final piece of music we hear in Star Wars, yeah, it's the right music that plays for that one of those iconic moments in Star Wars, the Tatooine sunset. Oh, yes. Those notes and the bars of music just, beautiful. Just beautiful. And yeah, and, some of the later films that Williams would do, and even when, say, not long after Star Wars happened, well, Williams getting an offer to, just 1 year after Star Wars came out, A New Hope, was offered to be a part of the Hollywood Bowl and be a conductor and such, and had been doing it since 1978. Yeah, and up to when, like, at the very end of the documentary, he was up to his 45th time being at the Hollywood Bowl. That's just amazing. And, well, obviously, one of the most biggies for him to play and conduct at the Hollywood Bowl is Star Wars. And yeah, because Star Wars making history once again, because it started this thing where, yeah, the music from Star Wars being played in concerts, Star Wars in concert, etc., just amazing, really. And by the way, because, yeah, speaking of concerts, and while on that subject still, because, yeah, there was apparently a time where, concerts were not, and the orchestra were not satisfied with the idea of playing movie scores and viewing it as like an art bastard. And I'm sure you know the subject I'm talking about, but the best I can explain, that's really weird. I mean, it's still music. What's the deal? What does it matter? That's weird, because, at that time, the orchestra having a bad attitude, and, this started a bit of a controversy and a resignation that happened with Williams, that whole thing. But, I mean, obviously, eventually, things did get patched up, rightfully so, and golly, because, the scores and music and movies, they're still music. It's all music. But, because at that time, because they had their reasons, because, viewing, movie scores being art bastard, as it's referred to in the documentary, and, just the orchestra, oh, please, no, this doesn't feel right, no, what's the proper music for concerts is, Beethoven or Amadeus, stuff like that, good God, so that was a weird and interesting time, but again, like I said, it's great to see that, it all got figured out, and, it all patched up and such, and, well, good thing, because nowadays, yeah, a lot of great movie scores being composed in concerts, yeah. Even, because, yeah, a lot of stuff, that I can think of, because, sometimes, a good chunk of times, movies being played at concerts while the orchestra plays the entire score as the movie runs, that whole thing. Or, say, at the BBC proms, the stuff that they've done, from Doctor Who, I've heard them do Superman and James Bond and so on, so you get my point, but a very weird and interesting time, but it got figured out and all patched up, and that's good to see, yeah. Anyways, so what next to talk about? Well, I mean, yeah, because, when the 1980s, rolled in, because, yeah, all the other other future films that John Williams would do up to the 1980s, because, and by the way, because, yeah, Superman was brought up at one point, even, say, archival footage of, Christopher Reeve, because Williams receiving an award, and, Christopher Reeve was there, congratulating and giving Williams compliment, and yeah, because Christopher Reeve made a point, because without Williams' score, then Superman wouldn't be Superman. I mean, not just with Christopher Reeve being responsible for believing in us, the audience, seeing that a man can actually fly, but it wouldn't be complete had it not been Williams' music and score. Not to mention that John Williams stated that, he was very familiar with the character of Superman, reading Superman in the newspapers, and to have the privilege to write the theme music for Superman. That was great. That was great for Williams, obviously. And yeah, and some of those that appear in the documentary uncredited, because yeah, some of those that I've mentioned, I mentioned on those that, were an influence on Williams and that he knew and admired, because, there was, say, Alfred and Lionel Newman. Well, not to mention that Thomas and David Newman, they do appear in this documentary. But until I mention on those that actually appear in this documentary. Also, Seiji Ozawa, if I'm getting his full name right. Because, who had a big part in Williams' life, and he was Seji was a music director of the Boston Symphony Orchestra from 1973 to 2002. And there's also Andre Previn, and and also whom rang up the Williams family about John Williams' wife having died. That was Catherine Reed. Yeah, so and also because there's also Morris Stoloff. Again, these are the ones that appear in this documentary through archive footage and photos. Morris Stoloff, Oliver Stone, and because Oliver Stone being a filmmaker, and when it came to say, the movies that Williams was involved in that were directed by Oliver Stone, and the music and scores that Williams wrote for those movies, and also Kenneth Wanberg, Toots Thellmans, if I'm saying the last name right, because Williams' parents, and his second wife, just appearing in archive footage and photos, But and to go ahead and name some of the those that are actually a part of this documentary, because I already mentioned David and Thomas Newman, and because, two other guys who would be in the business of bringing music and scores to life, and what they talk about of Williams is really excellent. And also Alan Silvestri being in the documentary as well. Good to see him in there too. And others that are musicians, not composers, but there's Chris Martin, who's a musician, part of Coldplay, and E.T. Being a big influence, for Chris Martin and what he talks about E.T. And there's also Branford Marsalis, saxophonist, Elvis Mitchell, the host of The Treatment, KCRW, and because say John Williams, he had even written music themes for say the Olympics and a bunch of news shows, and of course, what they are, and also because Ethan Gruzaka, if I'm getting the last name right, the grandson of John Williams, he's a record producer, good for him, and Paul Harish, if I'm getting his last name right, who's an editor, and also Lawrence Kasdan, if I'm saying his last name right, the writer of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Empire Strikes Back, him being in this, and because when talking about, say, Empire Strikes Back, and with Yoda's theme most prominently, just excellent, and James Mangold appearing in it too, and also there are a few musicians whom they play some of John Williams' music on the instruments they're playing, most prominently Helen Wargellen. She plays the second horn, and her coming from Virginia Symphony Orchestra, her playing the horn, and playing Princess Leia's theme. Really well done. And also a pianist, Emmanuel Axe, right, and Yo-Yo Ma, who's a cellist, and also Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, and not to mention, again, with Frank Marshall, actually, fun fact, and as Frank Marshall explains, because when it came to Raiders of the Lost Ark, that was the first time that Frank Marshall was working with Williams, and because Frank Marshall's father knew Williams when each of them were playing, music and such, and Jack Marshall, that's his name. So because Frank's father, Jack, was a musician, and so was Williams, and they knew each other. In fact, when Frank Marshall was 12 years old, Frank and his family would often visit Williams and so on. So from that young, Frank had already knew Williams, and the privilege to work with Williams on another piece of cinema history, which being Raiders of the Lost Ark, just, amazing. And because with them talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark and the music that Williams brought to the Indiana Jones films, another, moment in Williams' career where he made music history in the Indiana Jones franchise. Also, Ke Huy Quan, yeah, I think I got his full name right, aka Short Round, because there's a moment with him where he shares that when he got his Oscar win for you-know-what, he actually reunited with Williams, and actually, because according to him, this was the first time he met Williams since Temple of Doom, and, well, there was a moment between him and Spielberg and Williams, and, well, Spielberg telling Ke Huy Quan, if he knew that there was a theme for his character Short Round, and he knew this, and actually, all three of them, they started to hum Short Round's theme music. Dun, 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 dun. That's pretty good, yeah. And a moment where Ke Huy Quan shares that Spielberg told him that, you are now an Oscar winner, like the specific thing that Spielberg said, being very touching for Kay. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and also, the later films that Williams would do in his career, and also, keep in mind, not every single film that Williams had done music on is brought up. I mean, only, the posters and footage of the films are shown, say, Witches of the Eastwick, Hook, and 1979's Dracula, just the poster, and a bunch of others. And I would have known if I had seen a poster or a bit of footage of this, because 1941 is not brought up. I mean, I don't know if that was intentional, probably not, just, again, can't talk about every single film that Williams did, and maybe not show, a poster or footage, all of it, but, my point being is that, 1941 not being brought up. In fact, I know about this, because, fun fact, Spielberg actually loves the march that Williams wrote for 1941, so, yeah, so nothing of 1941 was mentioned, at least, at least a poster, but that's okay, yeah. But yeah, and also, in the 1970s still, because, when it came up to, say, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and the music that Williams wrote, and actually, it was quite difficult for Williams, because, a specific piece of music that he had to write for Close Encounters, and, because, those notes that are playing, dun, 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 well, there's more to it that happens at a certain point, just, yeah. And also, because Williams actually did 3 movies that same year, in 1977. I just looked it up, and I'm not seeing it, what the third movie was, because the 2 most prominent films that we know so well that Williams did the music and score for is A New Hope and Close Encounters. And if I remember to do so, I will put the name of the 3rd film he did in a text. It's right there. Can you see it? Of course you can. All right, but anyway, so... all right, so what next? Well, to speed things up some, because, not talk about every single thing that's in the documentary, the details and such, but, well, because, still, in the 1980s, the movies that Williams was doing, but, and also, because, when it would come up to, say, the 1990s, oh, because, of course, Williams still going strong, and, some of the movies that he would do, when they talk about this, because, and those that talk about Jurassic Park, and that being something else, that was a game changer, and the music having a huge influence on those who love music, and playing some of those notes, and, from, say, dun dun, dun dun, da da da, da 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 da, and just, of course, Williams did it once again with the music and score he wrote for Jurassic Park, but... not just that, of course, this had to be brought up too, because this was another biggie for Williams, and the fact that it came out the same year as Jurassic Park, and, because 1993 was a big year for Spielberg and for Williams. 2 big major motion pictures from Universal Pictures, and the fact as well, Spielberg had started on Jurassic Park, then the second film he would do that would come out that same year, Schindler's List. Yes. Yeah, because Schindler's List, man, because obviously we all know about the true story of what Oskar Schindler did, and with that Nazi prison camp and so on, and with it being adapted into a movie, how it was done, and bringing that true story to life, you know. And, of course, as we all know, the tough times that everybody, including Spielberg, went through making that movie. And when it came to the music and score, and actually, because when it came to Schindler's List, Spielberg did not have the music in mind on, you know, how it should be done, and with Schindler's List, because his mind was focused on bringing and telling this story, bringing the story to life and so on, yeah. But when it would come to the music, because, yeah, well, because obviously Spielberg having John Williams in mind. And there's a bit of a funny story where, yeah, because best said by Williams, where when Spielberg approached Williams, first approached him about doing the music and score for Schindler's List, Williams felt that, you know, he should get other great composers to do this, you know, and with what Williams specifically said. And according to Williams, what Spielberg said in response, I know, but they're all dead. I can see, I think I get Spielberg's point, because, yeah, but Spielberg knew what he was doing, because who better to have done the music and score for Schindler's List than John Williams? And there's a little montage. There's one moment in the documentary, a little montage on the many Oscars that Williams had won for the movies that he had done, like, well, from, say, Star Wars, E.T., Schindler's List, yeah, Schindler's List, Jaws, and yeah. And the fact that John Williams, having won not every single Oscar, but the fact that he had so many Oscar nominations, just, man, that's a record. You know, hey, being nominated so many times is still something. It is. Believe me. Facts. Yeah, and yeah, just like the music and score that was brought to life in Schindler's List, amazing once again. And when, like, say, at one point, a famous violinist was brought in to, you know, play the piece of violin music that's, you know, that's in Schindler's List. Da, 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 da. Yeah, which that, of course, being the great talented Gustavo Dudamel. I think I'm saying his last name right. I'm, of course, aware, of course, that he is, you know, a famed... wait a second, because... No, I'm getting the names wrong, like... Well, yeah, I mean, Gustavo, because he, you know, him being a conductor and such, and yeah, because what he has to say about John Williams, I'm getting the names mixed up. I hate when I do that, but just, you know, bear with me. Not him. I'm talking about, say, yes, yeah, here he is right here. I don't know, because, like, Gustavo, because I feel like Gustavo and this guy almost kind of look a little bit similar, but that's just me, you know. Hey, I'm sure you've been in that same situation, too. All right, I am leaving that in this review, so, all right. So, the violinist, yes, how did I not... Anyways, so, the violinist being chosen and handpicked and being the best one, the right choice to do the violin piece for Schindler's List, as I just demonstrated. I interpreted. That being the talented, great and talented, is Isaac Perlman. I think I might be butchering his first name a little, but yeah, Perlman. Yeah, just go with Perlman. Yeah, and actually, because Perlman had been wanting to work with John Williams for a long time, and John Williams did state to Perlman that, you know, when there's a specific time that's perfect, and yeah, like, you know, with what Williams specifically said, according to Perlman, it's understandable, just, yeah. Like, if there's a certain movie that Williams gets involved in, and that might require, like, a certain piece of a violin piece, yeah, then Perlman doing it. So, yeah, Williams approaching Perlman about playing the violin piece in Schindler's List, and literally... Perlman's first response was, "Let me think about it." And when Perlman, according to Perlman, when he shared this to his wife, about the offer he was given to do the violin piece for Schindler's List, and he told Williams that he would think about it. Well, Perlman's wife was like, "You said you'll think about it?" And yeah, because thanks to Perlman's wife, yeah, because him doing it, doing the violin piece. Why did it occur like that? Because I was thinking that to myself when watching the documentary. He wanted to work with Williams for a long time, and all of a sudden he says he'll think about it? Why did that occur to him? I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things. But, at the same time, obviously, Perlman being well aware of what he would be involved in, playing the violin piece in Schindler's List, because obviously him knowing what this movie was about, it's understandable. But, again, thanks to Perlman's wife, because, telling him that, you have to do this. Like, you said you'll think about it, just... that was great. And because Perlman, and here's another thing, because Perlman, I am well aware of him because, a great violinist. I most prominently know him for his appearance in the opening to Fantasia 2000. I'm sure the same goes for you. Actually, because, that was one of my very first introductions to Perlman was in Fantasia 2000, introducing like the first, segment of Fantasia 2000, the flying whales, that whole thing. So, because having done the violin piece, being the violin soloist for Schindler's List, and other great works that he's done. And also, like, whenever the Schindler's music is played at concerts or something, and when it would come to the violin piece, because even like when they show footage of when John Williams received his a Life Achievement Award, at AFI, and when they played the music of Schindler's List, the violin artist, Simone Porter, if I'm getting her first name right, because she played the violin piece of Schindler's List. Did a spot-on job, because I've seen that, and I'm sure you have too, and you can find it and watch it on YouTube. Just, it's excellent. Yeah, she did a spot-on job. And I think I've seen, one or two more where other violinists, they've played that of Schindler's List, and doing pretty good. Because, like, no matter what, the music in Schindler's List, and with that violin piece, it never fails to make any of us, to tear up. Just, because this is Schindler's List we're talking about, and the music and score that Williams wrote, just amazing, just, But, because with that, because, like, some of the, other films that are brought up, and, what Williams would continue on doing, in the music career, because, it's most prominent, this is most prominently brought up, and he has a huge part in this, Tanglewood. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with Tanglewood, because, Tanglewood being this place, because teaching those how to play instruments and stuff like that, and John Williams always, showing up there. In fact, even, like, doing concerts and stuff like that. Also, there's another moment that's brought up that, we see John Williams do along with his daughter, that being golfing. Because John Williams, doing pretty good at playing golfing. I think because he did at one point state that, I think, because he at first wasn't good at golf, but, eventually he got the hang of it. So, golf being a biggie for him, besides doing music. Just like the rest of the stuff that's brought up in this documentary, and again, some of the other filmmakers that Williams would work with, like Ron Howard appears in this documentary, and some of the movies that, like at least one of them that Williams got to do, that Ron Howard directed, well done, of course, and some of the other movies that Williams did the music and score of alongside with Spielberg, because, because like when, Empire of the Sun or Color Purple, and because I don't think Color Purple was really brought up, but, still. And also, Saving Private Ryan is brought up most prominently at some point, and also Lincoln as well, because, well, those movies, being all American and, with the music and score that Williams brought to those films, from Saving Private Ryan, Lincoln, and War Horse, really giving that taste and vibe, the feel of American music and, those era of times of those movies, just excellent. Yeah, really good. And bunch of other films that are brought up at times in this documentary, other films that he did alongside with Spielberg, and also when it would come to say, The Force Awakens is brought up a little, and also can't forget to mention him, Seth MacFarlane having a prominent part in this documentary, and not to mention that a lot of John Williams' music being used in other materials like, on TV or in commercials, like, the Volkswagen commercial with little Darth Vader, the Imperial March being used in that, or, whatever piece of, like, material that's done by Seth MacFarlane, like most prominently, Family Guy, because using John Williams' music and score from, if it's like, say, Star Wars or the Indiana Jones films, like they play that one clip with Peter, singing to the chase music in the opening of Last Crusade, that was good. I loved that. And again, when it's brought up about when Williams wrote music and scores for news broadcasts or the Olympics, and even like when it came to like football stadiums, and even like say a football stadium doing music and such of Star Wars, John Williams being there to compose it, just excellent. Again, the whole thing of Star Wars in concert. Also, this is like, okay. And to still speed things up some, because, the rest that do appear in this documentary, because, and whom else I didn't name, because, there's also Thomas Hooton, who plays a bit of music from John's, the principal trumpet, L.A. Phil, he's a trumpet player. Kate Capshaw appears at one point, because Kate Capshaw most prominently talks about when both her and Spielberg were invited to Williams' place, and for them to hear the piece of music he wrote and playing on the piano of Schindler's List, and that being something that Kate would not forget. Just, amazing. And the others that appear, Anne Sophie Mutter, who's a violinist as well, Jaffer C. Hernandez, if I'm saying his last name right, cultural reporter, the New York Times, and Karen Johnson, who is a concert master, and, he's from, she's from the U.S. Marine Chamber Orchestra. Nice, because, because, again, when it's brought up about, like, say, Saving Private Ryan, Lincoln, War Horse, but, Saving Private Ryan most notably, most prominently, and also knew this had to be brought up at one point, Chris Columbus, because when Chris Columbus appearing in the documentary and talking about when, say, when Williams was involved in Home Alone, because originally there was going to be another composer to do the music and score for Home Alone, but eventually that composer was no longer available to work on Home Alone. But then John Williams was, recommended, and most prominently Williams' agent recommending Williams for Home Alone, and Chris Columbus just amazed, just couldn't believe that this was going to happen, and of course it did, and Williams having seen Home Alone and really enjoyed it, and more than happy to do the music and score for Home Alone, and because with Williams' music and score, we're brought into the world of Home Alone. We're invested in it and so on. Just, with what's specifically described about the music and score that Williams brought to Home Alone. Just, of course, amazing. The music and score in Home Alone that Williams did, fantastic. And when Harry Potter's brought up, of course, and having Chris Columbus there, not just Home Alone, but Harry Potter, and when Chris Columbus had heard, the Hedwig theme and those notes and being played on the piano, dun dun da 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 da. Just again, Williams making music making magic with music and movies, and with what he brought to the 3 Harry Potter films. And yeah, because even Williams talks about this, because there's a moment where Williams talks about, I think, yeah, because he at first being hesitant on being involved in movie sequels, but, eventually having no problem with it, and with what he specifically said. And, the fact that he had done all, 9 Star Wars movies, did all the Indiana Jones movies, had done Jaws 2, and having done Home Alone 2, and having done the first 3 Harry Potter films, but didn't continue to do the music and score for the rest of the Harry Potter films. And he says that there having been, 8 Harry Potter films, which, yeah, he's right, because, parts 1 and 2 of the Deathly Hallows, well, that technically makes it 8 films, but yeah. Actually, this was not brought up in the documentary, because, fun fact, Williams did at one point express interest in coming back to do the music and score for the last 2 Harry Potter films, the Deathly Hallows parts 1 and 2, but unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, he couldn't do it. So yeah, it's interesting that wasn't brought up. I'm pretty sure it might not have been intentional, or maybe it wasn't necessary, but yeah. Because with Williams having done the first 3 Harry Potter films, and the music and scores that he brought to that, and just, with what's talked about in Harry Potter, just, excellent. Yeah. But yeah, and, did I name the rest on who? No, not all of them, because, the rest that appear and only through archive footage, Irwin Allen, Leonard Bernstein, Walter Cronkite. Yeah, Walter Cronkite. Because, again, the whole thing of, the whole subject brought up about, John Williams having wrote music and scores for, news broadcasts, and, Arthur Fedler, and, Michael Gorfain, Bernard Herrmann, and because there was a moment early on in the documentary where Williams had played the piano for a lot of famous composers, from Bernard Herrmann, Henry Mancini, the man who made music for Pink Panther, yep, that's him, Jack Marshall, and of course, Alfred and Lionel Newman. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was really cool, having met those iconic composers of that time. Mm-hmm. And anything else to say? Because, almost up to the end of the documentary anyways, but yeah. Well, I will say this because, as I did bring up earlier, because in the documentary, Williams, attending to his 45th Hollywood Bowl, where he's the conductor and such, and when they talk about, say, everybody in the crowd, the audience, coming to hear and listen to the music and score of Star Wars, and all of them whipping out their lightsabers, and they explained that it started off maybe 2 or 3 people, but with it expanding and everybody whipping out their lightsabers, just, having the time of their lives, and, John Williams and everybody else, especially Williams, really getting a kick out of it. Even when, Williams having a lightsaber of his own. It's amazing. It really is. And the later stuff that's brought up in the documentary, because, Williams, I think is, Williams not really doing, being involved that much with, say, technology, with music edits or something like that, with what's brought up in the documentary. Also, the mention of AI, just, And Williams stating that he hopes that in the next years, he's still around to, see with the next step of music, the evolution of music, with what he specifically said. And he makes a good point, and even say, Jennifer Williams saying that, she's happy to see that her father still continuing to work, and, she would worry. She stated that she'd worry if, her father would not work or anything like that. And this was not brought up in the documentary because I think, as we all know, there was 1 or 2 times where Williams was going to retire from doing music and scores, especially after Star Wars Episode 9. But that didn't come to be. So, since, from Star Wars Episode 9 being his last, and, also that goes for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But just, Williams still going strong. It's great to see. Just, I think, yeah, I've pretty much said all I've, had to say about the documentary and with what's in the documentary. But I will say this, like, the end credits, they were really nice because, this was great. Like, them using the piece of music from Hook, the music that plays during the end credits of Hook. Oh, that was great. And then when they play Yoda's theme, and even, like, yeah, the few times that Yoda's theme was brought up, and that, I think, seems as though that's one of Williams' favorite pieces of music that he wrote for Star Wars. Yeah, who can blame him? Oh, and also, this was not brought up, because, okay, as I did mention, like, a little bit of footage from when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award, AFI, yeah. Well, this was brought up when he accepted his award, and he brought up this funny story, and yeah, it's a shame that this was not brought up, because obviously, when it comes to documentaries, we wish that there can be more said, and other things that we would have liked to see be brought up. So this just now occurred to me, where there was this story that Williams shared at AFI when he accepted his award when it came to Empire Strikes Back. Because, well, I think even before Empire, he apparently had written a love theme for Luke and Leia. And when he was told by George that, they were brother and sister, well, how was John supposed to know? He had no idea, and that's understandable. But that's just, now, as of now, that's funny to think of, because, yeah. Yeah, but, again, I think I pretty much said all I've needed to say on this documentary. Yeah, music by John Williams. Yeah, I'm applauding some. It is an excellent documentary. I really enjoyed this. Everything about it from beginning to end. Knowing more about John Williams, more stuff that we probably didn't know of until now, thanks to this documentary. Those that are a part of this documentary, that have worked with him, and Williams has been a big influence on them, and those that influenced Williams, some tragic stuff and some bump in the roads that Williams went through, yeah. But at the same time, and with this documentary, he succeeded. Nothing stand in his way, doing really great with his career, and especially when it came to, say, doing music and scores for movies, and yeah, the fact, because he started off, playing the piano, he did jazz, and yeah, a bunch of other stuff that he did, and like when he did, say, TV, and all the great movies that he had done the music and scores for, just, yeah, everything about music by John Williams. It's really good. Excellent. For all of us who love and are influenced by the music that John Williams had written. Yeah. We all have our favorite pieces of music that Williams wrote and our favorite movies, and yeah. And this documentary is perfect for us, yeah, to watch. And because we all love and are huge fans of Williams and his music. Definitely. And I'm giving music by John Williams. Well, what the heck. 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for the documentary Music by John Williams. And what about you guys? What did you think of the documentary itself, Music by John Williams? Some stuff that, like me, you probably didn't know that much of Williams himself, and yeah. And I'm sure that, yeah, you being invested in this documentary and the subjects that were brought up, like which were your favorites, and yeah. And if you by any chance, like, maybe got a bit emotional and with certain things that were brought up, and get some good laughs with some funny stuff that was brought up, and those that appeared in this documentary. And which are your favorite pieces of music that John Williams has written from any movie he's done? Even if it's, say, jazz or TV, just, yeah, let me know on that. But yeah, overall, what do you think of the documentary itself? Music by John Williams, and with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the documentary Music by John Williams. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care, peace out, and may the Force be with you.